Why hello there! So today I want to cover what I guess is a slightly more serious topic than usual, and that is being overweight in Japan. Or fat, or curvy, or thick, or whatever word you prefer, being that in Japan. This is something that I get asked about quite a lot, and that kind of surprised me honestly, because even though I am a chubby girl in Japan, I don't really think about it all that often. So the fact that people have been so interested in it really surprised me. But I did want to cover it for you guys because I know it does seem to be something that people think about or worry about, and I hope that I can help to put some of those worries at ease. First off, let me say that this video was partially inspired not only by all the questions and comments I get about this, but also by a video from a few years ago by a YouTuber called Nippon Q. I'm going to link her video in the description because it's just amazing and it covers a lot of the, I guess, psychological aspects of being overweight in Japan and how that can affect you and how to deal with it. I think it's a fantastic video and you should definitely go check that out. So, I am also going to cover some of the psychological aspects from my own point of view. Of course, my experience will differ from everyone else's, but I'm going to speak about my own experience, and then I also want to cover some more practical aspects like finding clothing and what to wear to work and that kind of thing. So, let's get started. I think it's going to be easiest to start off with a little overview of my own experience living in Japan, and I hope this will give you a kind of reference point for what my own point of view on this is and where I'm coming from. I'm going to start this with giving you my clothing sizes because I feel like it'll be helpful to compare and see how similar or different our experiences are likely to be. So in New Zealand clothing sizes, I'm usually a 12 to 14, and I'm pretty sure that's a 12 in US sizing. My shoes are 25 centimeters, and I also wear an F or G cup bra, which has been the biggest problem. We'll talk more about that in Practicalities later. So, onto my actual experience, like emotional experience. So when I was first moving to Japan, I did put some thought into this and I did a bit of research, and like most people, I know that Japanese people tend to be smaller in stature than Western people, both slimmer and shorter. So I brought a lot of clothes from home that would be work appropriate, and I also bought some shoes just in case I couldn't find any. Turns out bras are the only real problem. Everything else I haven't had a problem finding. In terms of like comments and kind of the psychological aspect of it, I had really steeled myself to experience a lot of very mean comments about weight. I feel like I did a lot of research online before moving, and probably like most of you here, I'd read that basically you'll be subjected to an onslaught of comments about weight like every day. That's what it made it seem like. So I prepared myself for that. I was like, okay, it'll be fine, like I'll just let it roll off my back, it'll be fine, like I'll deal with it. But that never really happened for me. Like, of course there are comments about weight, whether it's from like the little kid on the street, or whether it's from my teenage students who love to talk about boobs and hips, or whether it's a joke from my coworkers. There are comments about weight. But it definitely doesn't happen all the time, and it isn't something that I think about all the time either. Like, when I was reading about it before I moved here, I kind of thought that I would hear it every single day and I would never be able to stop thinking about my weight and how different I am. But that's not what it's like at all. It doesn't happen that often, and when it does, it doesn't really feel malicious to me. Like, I'm the odd one out, and so I hear comments about my skin color, my eye color, my hair color, all of that, and so the weight comments just feel like that as well, like an observation. So yeah, I don't think I've experienced like a malicious, or what I thought of as malicious comment yet, which was a really huge surprise to me because, as I said, I did come here preparing myself to deal with comments like that, but yeah, that really hasn't been the case for me. So I hope that helps you to understand where I'm coming from, and I also hope that if you've been reading some similar things to what I read before moving here, that helps to put your mind at ease a little bit. Obviously it's better to over-prepare for mean comments just in case you do get some, but in terms of the actual reality of it, I feel like really malicious, cruel comments are pretty unusual. So yeah, please bear that in mind. Okay, so that is my basic overview of my experience. Let's get on to some practicalities. Let's talk practicalities, aka clothing, because that's pretty much what this section is going to be about. As I mentioned before, when I moved from New Zealand, I bought a whole ton of work-appropriate clothing and shoes with me because I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be able to find anything in my size here. Turns out that was completely wrong, and I've never had an issue finding clothing in my size at all, except bras. So for work clothing, my main go-to shop is Uniqlo, and about 90% of my work wardrobe comes from Uniqlo at all times. They're an incredible store, and they stock women's and men's clothing from size extra small to size 3L. I'm usually 2L if that is helpful to you for a reference point. So yeah, Uniqlo is incredible, and I go to them for a lot of things. Some other stores that are useful are the American stores that are also in Japan, like H&M and Zara. Usually they won't stock as higher sizing as the American versions do, but they do stock higher sizes than like an average Japanese store does. So that's all fantastic. Those are where I usually go for my clothing, and it's always worked for me. For shoes, the standard Japanese sizing to stop at for women's shoes is 25.5 centimeters. So I'm really lucky. I'm 25 centimeters in my feet, so ideal. Thank goodness I fall within that spectrum, because I've never had an issue finding shoes either. If you're below 25.5 centimeters, you should be able to walk into pretty much any Japanese shoe store and find shoes in your size. If you do have bigger feet as a woman, I have seen a lot of information on forums and Facebook groups about where you can find bigger shoes. So while I can't give you that information, please do go and look for it, because there's tons out there, like you'll be fine. Okay, so apart from that, as I have mentioned a few times now, bras are the place where I have the biggest problem. I cannot buy bras in Japan. Asian bra sizing is different from Western bra sizing, and so even stores that say that they stock F or G cups really mean that in Western sizes they stock a D cup and put an F like sizing sign on it. So I order all of my bras online. What I would recommend doing if you have a bigger cup size or even a bigger band size, because often those aren't available in Japanese stores either, is to find a brand of bras that you really like and that you know your size in, that you already have like a bra or two from them, and just order that brand online every time in the same size so that you know it's going to fit for sure. Because ordering bras online, the risk is you get them and they don't fit. I'm sure most of us have had that happen to us in the past. So that's all of my clothing things and where I get everything. Honestly, it's been so much less of an issue than I thought it would be. One thing that was an issue is skirts at work. I thought that I brought some amazing work-appropriate skirts from New Zealand, and I got told off in my first week at my main school because my skirt was too short. When you are a bigger girl, you have more butt, more hips, more thighs for skirts to go over, so of course they will fall shorter on you than they would on a slimmer woman. The other thing, which is kind of just sad, is that like my coworkers who are slimmer will get away with wearing shorter skirts than I could, and no one will say anything about it, whereas on a bigger girl it tends to be seen as more sexualized, so that's just something that you have to deal with. I wouldn't wear skirts to work unless you are sure that they fall knee length or below at all times. I gave up and just decided to wear pants because it's much easier for every day for me. So yeah, be careful with skirts as a bigger girl. However, in general, I think that clothing is much easier to find than you might think. So hopefully that helps. Lastly, I just want to talk about some of the emotional aspects of living in Japan and being overweight. So as I mentioned at the start of the video, I've had a really positive experience, and I think while a lot of that has to do with luck and being surrounded by really great people, a lot of it also has to do with the type of person I am. And I think the type of person that you are really will dictate how well you deal with this type of stuff. The type of person that I am is someone who's been overweight for most of my life and who's heard comments about it for most of my life. And so at some point you realize it doesn't really matter and you start to be able to ignore those comments quite easily. So if you're able to ignore those comments in your everyday life, like if that's something that you are good at as a person, if you're quite thick-skinned, I don't think you'll have any problem. However, if you are more sensitive, and please believe me, I don't say sensitive as a negative word. I think it's fine to be sensitive about weight-related issues. No judgment here, but if you are more sensitive about comments like that, I think there's one thing especially that is really important to keep in mind. And that is that in Japanese culture, it is fairly normal to make offhand comments about weight. In Western culture, making comments about weight, and especially someone who's overweight, is considered very taboo and like kind of cruel by default. So like whatever you say about someone's weight, that is a very rude comment in Western culture. In Japanese culture, it's much more like commenting on any other aspect of someone's physical appearance. So it's like saying, oh, you have freckles, or like commenting on someone's eye color or haircut or whatever. I think it's really important to recognize this distinction because it can really help to take the edge off those comments, to just remind yourself like, oh, this is a cultural difference, right? And it really is. Like, I promise you, it is much less taboo here to talk about weight or size. Like, I see my female co-workers talking about it all the time, or like grabbing each other's stomach fat and being like, oh, you put on weight. Like, it really isn't considered a huge deal here like it is in Western cultures. So I think if you can keep that in mind, that this is part of your cultural experience kind of, and this is just another difference between Japanese culture and most Western cultures, I think that will really help you to be able to deal with those comments a little better and to take them not as such a personal attack. That's about all I have to say about being overweight and living in Japan. I really hope that it's helped to answer some of your questions, and if you are overweight and considering moving to Japan or even coming on an extended holiday, I hope that this has helped to put your mind at ease a little bit. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to put them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. And apart from that, I will talk to you next time. Bye!